We also need to find out if the resources are available to do this and to do it adequately. And we want to look at the timing with other projects that could potentially conflict. I always remember a little trip to Shell offshore back a number of years ago, and I walked in, they were doing 8 other projects almost at exactly the same time. Not the best timing to do behavior-based safety. So, once you've done an assessment of your site, if you're ready to go, you go path A and you customize and you start implementing. If you find out at a site, and this is very often the case, that the site's fairly ready to do this, but the people don't know they're ready, there's not enough knowledge at the site, you can do some basic training, ask for volunteers, and come back and set up later. If you find out that the site is just drastically not ready, we put together a remediation plan for the site and say, here's what you need to do to get ready for Lean BBS. So, how does customization add to or create sustainability? We're looking for an analogy for this. One of the things that I remember, there was a particular garment that was very popular back a number of years ago when I was a little younger, and everybody wanted to have one, and I went out and bought one right off the rack, and it was kind of neat looking, but it didn't fit very well. And even though it was neat looking, people said, oh, you got one of those, and said good things about it. I wanted to get my money's worth out of it. I used it a few times, but I didn't keep it long term because it didn't fit. The same thing's true of safety programs and processes very often. They just don't fit. So do you want a perfect program or do you want a practical program? And we say if you have to, don't let the perfect get in the way of the good. You've got to be practical. You've got to get something that will work. You also have to get involvement in the process design, and that can happen at 2 levels. Your managers can give you strategic input, your workers can give you tactical input on how to do this. Both of these forms of input are very valuable and needed if you're going to have this process sustain long term. Deming said people support what they help create, a very, very true principle of one that we adhere to very strongly in Lean BBS. So is there a good fit for your culture? Many experts in behavior-based safety will say, make your culture fit our process. We say, no, that's not the way to do it. Make our process fit your culture. First of all, is it possible to do this where you are? Can you make a BBS process work within this work environment? Does it become the way we do things, or does it conflict with other priorities? Does it have support at all levels? Can you do it, and are you doing it out there? Are you really building a habit of doing something a safer way, or is this process that you're doing just an awkward distraction from everything else that you're doing? The better it fits, the longer it lasts. And that's why customization and sustainability work hand in hand. So, what if you've already got a process out there and you're saying, boy, this sounds good. I'd like to, wish we had done Lean BBS. It's not too late. You can turn existing processes lean, and we do this for a lot of companies very often. And how do we do that? You've got to involve the workers and the representatives right up front. Don't go in and say, I'm going to change your process. Walk in and say, we've got some ideas that we think that can make our process better, and involve the right people in doing it. Right size your teams and your checklist. This is one of the easiest things to do. A lot of these teams are just too big, they can't meet. I went to an organization just recently. They had a huge team, one from off of 4 different shifts. They never could get together. They never could meet. We divided it up and made a team on each of the 4 shifts. A very small team, only a couple of people on each shift. So instead of having 8 people trying to get together once a month, actually they had 4 originally. We downsized it to 2. We have 4 different teams meeting. Create a true safety focus. You know, a lot of BBS processes are saying, well, let's work on stuff, let's make safety better. You can't work on stuff and safety. You have to work on specific things. You know, you can't save mankind. You got to pick a particular one and go work on it. You can't prevent all accidents. You got to work on a list of accidents that are your most common. And when you start doing that, you'll find that it kind of spills over into the other areas and helps you be better at those also. You've got to target these observations. Don't just blanket them to your organization. I always remember I went to assess a process out in California. A man asked me, why do you observe my shop as often as you do the one next door? We haven't had an accident in 8 years. They'd have 40% of them right over there next door. Pretty legitimate question. Why do you want to observe your safe areas as often as you do your unsafe areas? At the nuclear power plants, they do most of their observations during outages because that's where they used to have most of their accidents. You need to develop, if you don't have one, or revive, if you've lost it, a results mentality. People have to be accomplishing something. The purpose of Lean BBS isn't to do observations and run a process, it's to reduce accidents. You've got to improve communication also. That's usually one of the sore spots of old processes. And you have to actively identify and address barriers and publicize what you've done. So, how do you make sure that Lean BBS works for you? You've got to assess your culture, and you've got to position this thing continuously. That means that one-time design isn't going to work. You've got to continuously design and redesign this as you go. You've got to customize it to your culture. You've got to have understanding and support from the site leadership, from employees, from contractors if they're involved in this also. You have to have the right leaders in the BBS process also, your steering committee, your sponsor or facilitator. You've got to have good observers, well selected and well trained. You've got to have data-driven action plans coming from this data that's gathered from this. You've got to have meticulous and ongoing communication. You have to have comparative and interactive metrics. Your leading and lagging indicators need to talk to each other if this is really going to stay results-oriented. You need to be getting continuous, recognizable results. You know, a process, even if the people are doing it well, if it's not producing results, doesn't get help from management, doesn't get support from management. And the last thing here, it's not enough to get people involved in this at the intellectual level. You need to get a hold of their hearts as well as their heads. Safety has a very, very good altruistic nature to it. Keeping people from getting hurt is a very good, very human thing to do, and one that's very much worthwhile. Now, I've given you a whirlwind tour of this here today. Would like to just close by mentioning that ProAct Safety has some online resources. Several of them are free. There's a lot of information on our website. A lot of the articles we've written about this are there. The podcast that Sean mentioned also can be picked up at our Safety Culture Excellence site. Webinars like the one you've just listened to are also free out there. We do have limited access for our trained internal consultants of a lot of other web-based products and support materials out there. Those are not available to the general public without a little bit of work on the other side. I hope this has given you a feel for what Lean is and how it works. Certainly there's a lot more to it than this, a lot of detail and has gone into this and the research for it. Be glad to talk to you a little more one-on-one about that if it's something you're interested in.
I hope you enjoyed this event. For more information about Lean Behavior-Based Safety, please contact us at info@proactsafety.com and visit our audio blog site weekly for more ideas at www.safetycultureexcellence.com.